Hello, this is Rethinking Online Donation, the presentation that I gave at the Donorfy Conference 2025 on March the 7th. Making this video now for the benefit of those who wanted to see the presentation but couldn't make it. So for those who don't know me, I am Andy Best. I'm an independent designer, developer, illustrator. More crucially though, I'm a Donorfy integrations partner. I've been working with Donorfy's code for about 10 years now, and this would have been the 5th time that I was invited to speak at the Donorfy conference. And because it was the 5th time, I decided to change ever so slightly what it is that I talk about. Normally what I talk about on the stage is the Donorfy API, and how, thanks to the power and the flexibility of the Donorfy API, that my team and we've been able to develop Charity Toolkit, which is our integrations brand. We've been building a suite of integrations that connect to Donorfy to automatically sync their data and transmit their data at intervals without the need for manual exporting and importing. It's all handled behind the scenes with the correct mappings, the correct configurations, and so on. At the minute, we have dedicated integrations for Access, charity websites, for Much Loved, for Raisley, for Gravity Forms, and we've got more planned as well. But like I say, that's not going to be the focus of my talk this year. But if you do have questions about Donorfy's API or Charity Toolkit and its connected services, please do get in touch. Normally as well, I also talk about the Donorfy forms and how I would use my code injection method to take an otherwise vanilla out of the box Donorfy form, like you see on the left there, and using that method, tailor it, customize it to have it presented more like the example on the right there, which is not only more sympathetic to the brand and the page furniture of the website upon which that form gets embedded, but it also has its functionality boosted as well. So we've got some, in this particular example, there is some custom logic on the fields. We're collecting some data that's not standardized, so it's a richer data experience. Taking care of the redirect issue, the scrolling issue, and a bunch of other things as well. So basically taking the initial boilerplate of the Donorfy forms and improving, rounding off those rough edges and improving the user experience, which is what you ideally would want on your website. But again, that's not the focus of my talk this year. If you've got questions about Donorfy's forms, please do again reach out and get in touch. And then the other thing that I talk about usually when I'm on the stage here is Donorfy's web widgets, because I bloody love Donorfy's web widgets. I use them for the vast majority of the projects I work on. They are Donorfy's original payment solution for facilitating donation, but they have the advantage over forms in that they can be tailored and customized all the more, right to the hill, and through that we've been able to build some extremely powerful experiences for donors to engage with. So an example is this one here, and those, and those. But like I say, this year we're going to be and those. So what you can see, hopefully what you can see is I've built a lot of these in the region of 100 or so widget integrations that bring a lot of the design prowess and the other sort of customization capacity that the forms don't have, and that the API wouldn't give you anyhow. So what I've learned through, whilst these all look very different aesthetically, they obviously appease the brand of the charity and the website that they're built onto. Whilst they all look exceptionally different and bespoke, there is one underlying commonality between them all. There is one common factor that each of the installations that I build with a Donorfy widget share, and that is the blueprint. The blueprint, it's a three-step process. How often do you want to give? How much do you want to give? And then give. 1, 2, 3. Really streamlined, really concise. They all subscribe to that blueprint. Oxfam uses that blueprint. Cancer Research UK use the blueprint. Save the Children use the blueprint. Hell, even the Open University use the blueprint. These major organizations, they're all using the blueprint for the foundation of their donation journey, their online donation journey, because they will have had the budget and the time to conduct their R&D, their focus groups, their A/B testing, and what they will have learnt is that the greatest yield of donations that they were receiving were coming through the blueprint experience, the user experience that had been optimized as heavily as it has been, consolidated, stripped down, really pared down, and be as kind of streamlined as possible. And and that's great, and that's fine. We can celebrate that. And of course, we do. A lot of those experiences I build, as I say, have the blueprint underlying. What interests me, though, is what the genesis of that was, what the blueprint, where it sort of came from. And I think I have a theory. Squirrels. Now, stick with me here. Squirrels. E-commerce has dominated the internet for decades. And squirrels are what e-commerce and a retail kind of industry believe or perceive consumers to be. That skittish, fearful creatures that'll disappear at the mere hint of complication or danger. This is who the customer is perceived to be likened to. If your user experience, if I was to be buying, I don't know, some deodorant or a book, the latest novel or something like this on a website, if I was experiencing any reason why I couldn't proceed, if the forms were too complicated, if the loading was too slow, and so on, I would go somewhere else. I'd find a different shop. I'd climb a different tree. I'd leave. I'd panic. I'd abandon the basket. That's terminology in the lexicon now. The e-commerce model, therefore, in the design process to get a commerce flow into place is to really, really streamline that experience to mitigate any kind of complication or anything that might hinder conversion. And I feel like the blueprint has lent a lot on that ethos. It's taken a lot of that theory from e-commerce and adopted it. But I'm not convinced that that's wholly the thing to do. I'm not poo-pooing the template, the blueprint in totality, but the mindset of a supporter, of a donor, is not that of a consumer of an e-commerce site. I can't go to a different charity to give my support to yours. I can't climb a different tree, right? If I will persevere to get my donation to you if my heart is dedicated to your cause. I'm not saying that therefore we can have imperceptible levels of poor user experience on the site, but I'm saying we can take a few more liberties, right? I feel like we can give more back to the donor. So what I actually want to talk about today, this year, is how we can stray from the blueprint, how we can inject other elements and other ideas into the online flow, the online donation flow, and make that experience more rewarding, more engaging, more aesthetically more pleasing, and less soulless, which is what the blueprint can often be. So I've got some examples prepared for you. I just want to inspire you. I just want you to, go away, take away from this some ideas. I've not road tested any of these, so obviously I've got no data to back up what I'm saying. But again, it's more about what else can we do. So let's take a look at Community Fuel as the first example. Community Fuel are a food distribution organization. They're getting supplies over to food banks, community groups and such. And they obviously require funds to do that. So this is their donation page on their website. As you can see there, we've not strayed too far from the blueprint. We're asking here, how much are you looking to donate today? £15, £50, £125. As I'm cycling through those amounts there, as I'm selecting those different buttons, you'll notice that there's an interactive component on the left-hand side. This otherwise empty void on the left is being filled up with this physical representation of food. The more generous I am in my donation selection, the more that container is filling up. Beyond that, we've also got the number of families that these amounts will purport to help. So again, we're representing those with that little family icon of 4 faces there. The higher up, the more generous I am, the more families gets reflected in there. What this is doing, obviously, it's producing a visual representation of the generosity. Okay, it's kind of leading the donor to understand. It's not a throwaway sentence about how the money can help us. We're having that kind of physically represented here in an illustrative form. So this garners more confidence in the donation. It incentivizes higher donation. And it's a more engaging experience than a simple button press. You know, I'm being rewarded with this animation over here. It's a tool that I'm now curious about, right? I want to click these buttons. I want to see what happens. So we're introducing a little bit more play, a little bit more creativity to the page. But I feel like we can take this example further away from the blueprint. So in this second iteration, we've inverted the ask. The ask isn't now, how much do you happen to have in your wallet at this moment? If you happen to have £125 on you right now, oh gosh, do we have the button for you? Right? That's not the mechanic here. Here, the question is framed, the first question is framed, how many families will you support? Not can you support, not would you like to support, will you? That kind of affirmation in there to lock in that donor. And then the question, then the control is this range slider. So now we're dragging this little family icon from before, we're dragging that left and right. The more towards the right, the more generous we are, the more families we're trying to help. Again, the fruit on the left-hand side fills up accordingly. And only in the final green row at the end of that right white box, that green bar there, only there are we assigning any sort of monetary value to what the selection the donor is making is. So again, the question is, we're putting the support first. We're reframing this ask. We're having the donor confirm their level of support, their level of interest in your organization ahead of what's financially viable, but they've got the tool there to find that balance. So I suppose the takeaways from that example are, and I did cover most of those just now, is that by framing the ask better, we bring the cause forward. We make it cause focused. We can center what we're asking and what the ask is, and frame it directly with the way your organization will benefit from that donation. This is a page I talk about. I've put virility there. Of course, going viral is the holy grail online. I imagine this design is far from obtaining that status. But this is a page I talk about. With utmost confidence, I don't think anybody who's watching this video can say that conversations are organically being had right now somewhere in the world about the donation experience on your website. Whereas something like this, with an engaging control, you know, John might lean over and say, Steve, did you see this? Look at this. Look at the fruit falling down. Yeah, that's right. And then Steve might think about that. Right? Steve's had eyes on that now. That might occur to him down the line. What was that website with the falling bananas? That was pretty good. Yeah, let's and already it's the conversation is being had. And it's better for the brand. See, this is something else I touched on a moment ago. Community fuel is turning a negative into a positive, and it's family orientated. So their tone of voice in their brand, the tone of the website, the tone in all of their messaging is a bit more upbeat. And so to have a soulless button clicking exercise for their donation flow would be sort of at odds with that tone, and there's a lot of legwork getting everything right about the rest of the website, but kind of just tacking on a really kind of stoic donation experience. It doesn't quite sit right with the organization at large. So something like this, where we have a bit more play, we have a bit more engagement, that's better for the brand. So I've just at the bottom there, I've added that this will play nice. An example like this will play nice with Donorfy's API, its forms, and its web widgets. Now, obviously, those things will require bespoke development to get to this point. But yes, an experience built like this can then interface with any one of those three Donorfy mechanics. I'm going to look at a different example now. This is Relief from Grief. They are a bereavement and grief counselling service, offering counselling hours to help people who've experienced loss, who experience grief, and help them manage that and move through it. When Relief from Grief exhibit at various events, they bring with them the bereavement button. This is a button that they place on a pedestal, and they invite members of the public to come over and just give that button a press if they've experienced loss, if they've experienced grief in their life and wished that they'd had, or hoped that they'd had an outlet for it, some support, they wished that they had a service like Relief from Grief on their side to interface with. And this is a Wi-Fi enabled button, and it's recording those presses and storing them to the database that drives the Relief from Grief website. This is the donation page for that website. I'm just going to walk you through it left to right. So on the left hand side, column 1, in the last hour, 5 people told us they wished they'd had counselling during their grief. You can help the next 6, beg your pardon, that's gone up again. Just £10 will provide someone with 1 hour of counselling, ergo donation of £60 to cater for all 6 of those people. Obviously what's happening here is this is a multiplier, but it's taking real world data. This is a live snapshot of people interfacing with the charity right now, and quite literally in the last hour 6 people have told us they wish they'd had counselling, and so the multiplier has understood that and has geared this donation for 6 times over. Excuse me. Where this is effective and where this is important is that this donation experience takes the narrative of the organization and weaves it in. This is not, again, a donation experience tacked on to the end of the the charity website. This takes everything about the About Us page, the Our Stories pages, the user stories, our causes, our beliefs, everything else that the website's doing really, really well, the messaging, all of the breakdown of the good that the organization does. It takes that and it weaves it right into this experience, which a lot of charities don't do. A lot of charities will just slap a form on a page because they need to. Bare minimum. We need a form. It needs to capture money. That's good enough. But here, though, we're informing the ask, the giving mechanic of the site is being driven by real-world data. This is, obviously there's the or enter your own amount link on the far right-hand side, because potentially the 120 people might have pressed that button in the last hour, and then that's quite an ask. So obviously what this is doing is it's incentivizing, it's giving context, better context, live context, authentic data, is giving genuine context to the giving story that's here. Storytelling is paramount for a lot of charities, but a lot of charities, they don't, as I say, they don't take that storytelling and the fundraising and blend the two in the most effective way that they could, or if they do it at all. So a takeaway from an example like this, as I just mentioned a moment ago, it enforces the storytelling. The narrative is weaved in. So there's a purpose, a deeper purpose to this page. It's not purely transactional. It's not at face value. There's a lot more tied to the bones of the organization and its messaging. Authentic data, credence to the cause. A lot of charities will obviously have the sound bites. £10 will help us do this, £20 will help us do that, and that's fine, and that's presented. It's a little intangible, potentially, There are better ways to frame those pieces of data, and in this example, the way to do that is to actually utilize that data. It's not just a text node on a page. It's not just a sentence that we're throwing around anymore. Now that very data is informing how this page functions, and that makes that all the more integrated. And higher funds, obviously a multiplier is going to generate higher funds. If I were coming here with my fullest intention to spend £10, but I get to this page and see that in the last hour 2 people have told us they'd wish they had the service, the multiplier's done its thing and raised that to 20 quid, I'd look at that and consider myself, well, yeah, I came here helping one person, but knowing that there's 2 sitting there, that there are now 2 people, do I want to help one and not the other? Can I stretch to 20 quid? I probably could. So there are cases here where this will exercise greater generosity from people as well. Again, final line on this example, that it plays nice with Donorfy's API, Donorfy's forms, and Donorfy's web widgets. Again, not out of the box. A lot of bespoke development will need to get in to get those working, but those endpoints of those Donorfy products means that the data will turn up in Donorfy mapped accordingly. One last example for you, the Greenhaven Trust. Greenhaven Trust are a site based in the southwest of England. They have they have botanical gardens, they have nature trails, education centre, and so on. It's a sort of heritage site, and therefore the maintenance, the upkeep, and so on requires a constant flow of funding. But I'm going to talk to you today about their Christmas appeal. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I can't stand Christmas appeals. I can't stand Christmas appeals. Putting a Santa hat graphic on your logo does not a Christmas appeal make. If your online donation experience is the same year round, including at Christmas time, and all you've done is dress it up in tinsel, you can't credibly claim that to be a Christmas appeal. All right, I understand capitalizing on the generosity and the spirit of the season and so on, but yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't hold water for me. I understand that obviously the context of a lot of organizations doesn't necessarily lend itself well to any kind of variation at Christmas. I'm going to think off the top of my head, domestic abuse charities and organizations that deal with narratives like that. Yep, they likely do see a spike in need for their services around the festive period. Homelessness as well, whilst Christmas perhaps isn't the catalyst for one finding themselves homeless, but the climate and the atmosphere and the weather and such around the season obviously is quite detrimental to those in that position, and so organizations dealing with that also are stretched at that time. So there are credible cases to be made for certain organizations, but for the organizations that don't, I mean, birds at Greenhaven Trust, the plight of birds is no different year round. I mean, if anything, they bugger off at Christmas to somewhere warmer. So it's harder to reconcile that ask. So instead, what Greenhaven Trust do, they run a New Year appeal. And this appeal, it commences in November and it runs through December concurrently with everyone else's Christmas appeals. But the framing of what they're doing is different. Okay, we've got some big goals we need your help reaching in 2026. You can give us a head start right now. Make your goal selections below. So on this campaign page, they've outlined all of the pots that they would want funding for, all of the projects they've got planned. And each one of these in 2026 likely will have an isolated, dedicated appeal running. But they're capitalizing on this time of the year to get a leg up on that, to get a head start raising funds for these things in totality. So they've presented it here almost like a menu. And in fact, we are in some ways as well leaning into the typical e-commerce flow in that we are filling a basket right now. So I'm making my selections. I am adjusting and configuring those selections as I go for the various things that I want to donate towards. you'll see here that I'm therefore free to make my choices. As a donor, I feel more empowered. This, again, it's not about throwing £10 at the organization and seeing what happens. This is about me. I'm almost voting right now on how I want to stake my claim in my support to this organization. And as well, if I then turn up to this organization's site and see the fountain coming in and see the treetop walk being maintained, I'll know that I've had a hand in that. So once my basket is full and configured, I could then proceed to the donation final flow, the checkout flow. Slight twist on that same concept. What if we pit those appeals against one another? Like swipe left Tinder situation. I don't know how Tinder works. I've never actually used it. But here, by parrying the goals against one another, the donor, the supporter is now voting. Right? They're filling the basket based on one or the other. That slims down the experience, but it adds an extra level of engagement to the experience, and it gamifies the experience to a degree, in not in a stigmatized way, obviously, but in a positive, more interactive way. So I'm filling up my basket now with the selections. One or the other, and they're ranked. There were urgent goals, there were moderate goals, and there are low goals as well. And then when we get to the end of that quiz, that flow, the checkout cart that pops out there, and we get to tailor, because only now in this example do we learn how much the optimum values are sort of predefined. So I'll just configure those, tailor those. Excuse me, and then yes, commit my donation based on that. I've rounded that to an even 100. Takeaways from that example: if we gamify an experience, we heighten its engagement. We encourage people to stick around longer, click a few things longer, but they're still on task, they're still on objective, and they're still going to make a donation by the time they're done. But it gives them the affinity with your cause. A donor has control over the choices. It's like they are a stakeholder now, to a degree. They're not just chipping in and out of appeals. They're not just donating generically. They are having a say in how much per goal and which goals they're opting into, which gives them more control, which, as I say, gives them the feeling that they're being heard and that their donation matters. It's more inclusive. And boo to Christmas, generally speaking. Better utilization of context. If you can't fathom, if you can't, can I spin the word fathom in now? I've said it. I don't think I can. If you can't feasibly, is the word I was aiming for. If you can't feasibly orchestrate a Christmas context for your organization, it's quite limp to just foist one upon your donors with a graphic or two. I feel like you can incentivize people if it's more authentic, and if Christmas isn't going to do it for you, New Year absolutely can, because every charity will experience a new year, every charity will plan ahead, and you get to really capitalize on that context with an example like this. In terms of play nice with, in this instance, web widgets or the forms, but you would need to use the API for both to get the itemization of that basket properly catered for. So this is widgets or forms, but for sure you'd need the API for an example like this. So the ultimate takeaways in regards to the blueprint. Am I saying the blueprint is terrible? I'm not. Of course not. It has had a lot of time and attention and money spent on getting it to what it is. It is effective. I just think it's heavy-handed. I think it's quite overzealous, and I think it detracts a lot from charity as a context, as a journey, moving through your charity's story, and the concept of donating over purchasing. So I think you've got scope to refine it. I think charities are in a unique position to take an e-commerce flow and get creative with it, without diluting it to the point of the blueprint of how sort of soulless it can be. So retain the good, the decent UX, the streamlined, frictionless idea. We're not going to throw bells and whistles in that stymie, that hinder moving through the flow, because that's counterintuitive. but we can ditch the bad elements of it, right? If it's divorced from cause and story, if your blueprint is just slapped on because, well, hey, we need a donation page, it's not working hard enough. You can it will take donation, you will see donation coming in, but how much more would you see if there was a reason to come back to that page, if there was a reason to stay on that page and configure things and think about things a little more carefully and more with more validity than simply pressing a few buttons just to move on. Divorced from brand, as we've seen, a lot of the storytelling, a lot of the messaging, a lot of the underlying power of what your cause does and how it presents itself is lost in these donation experiences, and that leaves them feeling strictly transactional, and that is often at odds with the tone, at odds with the charity and what the charity stands for. So let's get some life back in. Okay, let's get some of the love back in to these flows. Okay, and that's when I would move on to the any questions section of the talk. So if you do genuinely have any questions, be that about those examples I've just shared, the other elements of Donorfy that I didn't cover in this presentation that I typically would have, you can find me at andybest.com. Head to there, and yeah, look forward to hearing from you.